Hey everyone, and welcome to another Deep Dive. Today we're listening in on a really fascinating conversation
Oh, yeah.
with three of the founders of Deepdive.ro.
Okay.
It's a Romanian media outlet. And these guys, Prefresitul Floris Galasi Neofitios and Varlam Shimnikul, they're really not holding back as they
Yes.
discuss Romania and kind of the state of the world right now.
Well, and what's so interesting about this particular recording is it really is like we're just listening in on their personal conversation.
Yeah,
It's very candid. So
absolutely.
sort of letting loose all of their anxieties, their hopes, their concerns.
Right off the bat, they kind of dive right into a debate about the ongoing war and whether or not violence is ever justified in the pursuit of peace.
Right.
And
And that's such a thorny question.
it is.
But one of them actually makes a case for, you know what, maybe a negotiated peace.
Okay.
Even if it means some sort of territorial concession is the only way
Wow.
to prevent further bloodshed.
So they're actually arguing for appeasement?
They are. Wow. Which is,
That's a tough stance to...
yeah, it's a very controversial stance.
Yeah.
And to illustrate their point, they actually bring up a historical parallel.
Okay.
They talk about Czechoslovakia in 1939 and how, attempts to appease Hitler ultimately failed
Right.
and led to a much larger conflict.
So using that as an example of why appeasement is so...
Exactly.
dangerous.
It's a cautionary tale.
Yeah.
It's like, are we going to make the same mistake again? Are we going to fall into that same trap?
It's really making me think about, how those decisions back then
Yeah.
had such huge consequences.
And it's interesting how they connect that to their own anxieties about
Yeah.
Romania's future, particularly because, they share a border with Ukraine.
Right.
So for them, this is not some abstract geopolitical game.
Right.
They're really grappling with the potential for this conflict to spill over.
Yeah. And possibly even, Russia making a move on Moldova,
Exactly.
which is right next door.
Right.
So they have a very real...
They have skin in the game.
Yeah, they have skin in the game.
So it really shapes their perspective.
So you're saying that their Romanian perspective gives them this very unique sense of urgency
Absolutely.
and maybe even a bit of fear about what's happening.
Yeah. I mean, they're living right on the edge of this conflict.
Yeah.
It's not some distant threat to them. It's very, very real.
This deep dive is really making me think about the ripple effects of global events and how they can hit home in ways that we might not even expect.
Totally. Yeah.
So then they go on to discuss Putin and
Yes.
his motivations.
What's he thinking? What's driving him?
Yeah, and also the West's response.
Right, right.
And one of them actually argues that Putin feels like he's being backed into a corner
Oh, interesting.
by the expansion of NATO and the EU.
Mm-hmm.
And he views Western actions, particularly after the 2011 Arab Spring,
Okay.
as like a direct threat to his own power.
So they're saying that he sees the West as deliberately trying to undermine him?
Yeah, and another one of the founders actually brings up this idea of Putin's personality
Okay.
and his ambition to kind of revive a sense of Russian greatness
Yeah, hey.
being major factors in all of this.
Right. So it's not just about external threats. It's also
Yeah.
about internal drives.
Exactly.
And they bring up this concept of Ruski Mir, which is fascinating.
Ruski Mir. Okay, I'm not familiar with that term.
So Ruski Mir essentially means Russian world.
Okay.
And it encompasses, all Russian-speaking peoples and territories.
Oh, wow.
And it's often used to justify Russian foreign policy,
Even if that means using force.
even if it means using force.
Wow.
So it's kind of this mix of historical grievances and cultural ties and this desire for
Right.
political dominance.
So they're saying that Putin's actions are being driven by a combination of fear, ambition,
Yes.
and this ideology of uniting the Russian world. Man, that's heavy stuff.
It's complex.
Yeah, it adds a whole other layer of complexity to understanding what's going on.
And then they shift gears a little bit and start talking about another global phenomenon,
Okay.
the rise of populism,
Okay.
and particularly figures like Donald Trump.
Now, this is where it gets really interesting for me.
Yeah.
They seem to be really worried about the erosion of democratic norms and how fear and division are being used as political tactics,
Oh, yeah.
not just in the U.S., but globally.
Globally, for sure.
What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, their concerns are definitely valid. Populism often thrives on exploiting anxieties,
Right.
pitting people against each other.
Yeah.
And they point to figures like George Simeon in Romania and
Right.
Giorgia Meloni in Italy as examples of this trend.
Okay, so how do they connect
So
Trump and Putin?
it's interesting because they're on opposite sides of this conflict in Ukraine.
Right.
But what they highlight is how both leaders, despite their different political systems, share certain tactics.
Okay.
They both appeal to a similar sense of resentment and disillusionment among their supporters. And both have shown a willingness to bend or even break democratic norms to achieve their goals.
Right. So it's like they're both on this...
Like this seesaw of extremes.
Extremes.
Yeah, even if they're coming from different sides.
Wow. Okay. So now I see what you mean about how this trend of populism matters to me.
Yeah.
Even if I don't live in Romania or Russia.
It can have ripple effects.
Yeah.
It can erode trust in institutions.
Right.
It can make it harder to address global challenges like climate change, for example.
Right.
And it can even contribute to conflicts like the one we see unfolding.
Absolutely.
So understanding these trends is crucial no matter where you are in the world.
Wow. I'm starting to feel like the world is this incredibly interconnected web.
Yeah.
And what happens in one place can have major consequences everywhere else.
And that brings them to another major force that's shaping our world technology.
Okay, let's dive into that.
They really hone in on artificial intelligence.
Okay.
And its potential to completely transform the future of work.
Yeah, this is something that I've been hearing a lot about. And it is kind of exciting, but also a little bit scary.
Right.
What are they saying?
I mean, they're expressing both excitement and anxiety about how quickly AI is anxiety. One of them is saying AI is inevitable, it's going to happen. We have to adapt.
Right.
But then another one is whoa, hold on. What about all the jobs that are going to be lost? What about all the social unrest that this could cause?
What are they specifically anxious about?
Well, they're concerned about the potential for AI to exacerbate existing inequalities.
Okay.
They point out that, parents like Romania, where access to education and resources might be limited, but could be particularly vulnerable to the negative impacts of AI-driven job displacement.
Yeah, it's easy to get caught up in the hype of new technology.
Right.
And forget about the people who might be left behind.
Exactly. And this concern about the uneven distribution of technological progress actually ties in really well with their broader reflection on the emerging global landscape.
Okay, let's talk about that. What are their thoughts on the big picture?
Well, they see a world that's increasingly shaped by geopolitical rivalries, rapid technological change, and, that rising tide of populism that we talked about earlier.
Okay.
They highlight the trade wars between the U.S. and China as a sign of a shift away from globalization and towards a more fragmented and protectionist world order.
It sounds like they're feeling pretty pessimistic about the future.
Not entirely. I mean, there's definitely a current of anxiety there.
Yeah.
But they also show a sense of pragmatism.
Okay.
It's like they're acknowledging the challenges while also searching for ways to navigate this uncertain terrain.
So it's not all doom and gloom.
No, not at all.
Okay, good.
In fact, what's really interesting is how they connect their analysis of global affairs back to their own experiences in Romania.
Okay.
They see their country as kind of a microcosm of these larger trends.
Yeah.
A place where globalization, technological disruption, and political polarization are all kind of colliding.
It's like they're saying that these global trends aren't just abstract concepts.
No.
They're having real tangible effects on people's lives.
Absolutely.
All over the world.
And they even get into some of the cultural and generational divides within Romania itself.
Interesting.
Talking about the gap between older generations who might be more nostalgic for a simpler time and younger generations who are maybe more comfortable with change and more open to the opportunities of a globalized world.
It's like that tension exists everywhere.
Everywhere.
It's that clash between tradition and progress.
Oh, yes.
The fear of the unknown versus the excitement of what's new.
And I think what they're trying to do is find a way to bridge those divides.
Yeah.
To find some common ground in a world that feels increasingly fractured.
That makes a lot of sense.
One of them even uses this really vivid phrase, bump in the global psychic.
Whoa.
To describe this period of uncertainty and upheaval.
I like that. That's a powerful image.
And, it resonates with that urge a lot of us feel to kind of unplug.
Yes.
To step back from this constant barrage of information and noise.
Right.
And kind of reconnect with something simpler and more grounding.
It makes me think about what they were saying earlier about retreating to the mountains.
Yes.
To escape from the chaos.
Right. And it's tempting, right?
It is.
It's not realistic for most of us.
No.
And they acknowledge that they're not advocating for escapism.
Right.
Their conversation ultimately becomes kind of a call to action.
Okay.
They're urging listeners to engage with these complex issues, to have those difficult conversations, to seek out diverse perspectives.
So instead of running away, they're encouraging us to lean in,
Exactly. They emphasize the importance of critical thinking, media literacy, and
Okay.
civic engagement as essential tools for navigating this turbulent landscape.
That's good
They
advice.
seem to really believe that we all have a role to play in shaping the future,
Hmm.
however uncertain it may be.
So it's about finding that balance between acknowledging the anxieties of the present moment,
Yes.
but also maintaining hope for a better future.
Yeah.
Trying to stay informed and engaged without getting completely overwhelmed by all the chaos.
You got it.
But
It's about recognizing that even amidst all the uncertainty and upheaval, there's still room for hope,
yeah,
for connection, and for collective action.
I like that.
It's not about having all the answers. It's about asking the right questions
Yeah.
and being open to different perspectives.
It's really inspiring to hear them talk about the power of dialogue and collective action. They're not just complaining about the state of the world.
No.
They're actively searching for solutions.
Exactly. And I also recognize the need for empathy and understanding, especially in a world that's becoming increasingly polarized.
Right. It's a good reminder that we're all in this together.
Yeah.
We all have hopes and fears, and we all have a stake in shaping the future. It's really refreshing to hear these guys talk about global issues with such nuance and compassion.
Yeah.
They're not shying away from the tough stuff.
No.
But they're also not just, giving into despair either.
And you know what? Even amidst all the seriousness, they still manage to find moments of humor.
Yeah.
They even joke at one point about retreating to the mountains.
Right.
To escape all the chaos and find some peace in nature.
I think we've all felt that urge at some point, right? Oh,
totally.
To just unplug and disconnect from all the noise.
Yeah.
But as they pointed out, that's not really a solution, is it?
Not a long-term one, at least.
No.
Their conversation is a powerful reminder that we can't just bury our heads in the sand.
Right.
We have to stay engaged even when it's uncomfortable.
So what's the big takeaway here? What do they want listeners to walk away with?
I think they're challenging us to be more than just passive observers.
Okay.
They're urging us to be active participants in shaping the future,
Yeah.
to be critical thinkers who question assumptions and engage with diverse perspectives.
Think about your own job.
Exactly.
Could AI change it?
These founders believe that you had a say in how that happens.
So instead of just accepting, what we hear from politicians or the media,
Right.
we need to do our own research, form our own opinions, and be willing to challenge the status quo.
Absolutely.
That's a powerful message.
Yeah.
And you know what's really cool?
What's that?
Even though they're speaking from a Romanian perspective, their concerns and insights really resonate with a global audience.
It's universal.
Yeah, they've given us all a lot to think about.
For sure.
No matter where we live or what our background is.
Their conversation reminds us that all of the challenges that we face.
Yeah. From geopolitical instability to technological disruption to the erosion of democratic norms are all interconnected.
It's a web.
It is.
What happens in one part of the world can have a ripple effect everywhere else.
And the choices we make, both individually and collectively, have the power to shape the future.
Wow, this deep dive has really opened my eyes to the complexity of the world we live in.
Yeah.
I feel like I've gained a whole new perspective.
Me too. And you know what really stands out to me is their unwavering belief in the power of dialogue. They see conversation as a way to bridge divides, to foster understanding, to find common ground, even amidst all the chaos and uncertainty.
That's such a hopeful message.
It is.
It's a reminder that we're not alone in facing these
We're
challenges.
all in this together. Yeah, we have each other, and we have the power of conversation to help us navigate the path forward. This has been an incredible deep dive, full of insights and anxieties, and ultimately a glimmer of hope. So listeners, as you go about your day, remember the words of these three founders of Duhovnik.Grow. Stay curious, stay engaged, and never underestimate the power of thoughtful conversation to illuminate the path forward. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.